All right, thank you for taking the time to join us on another edition of our program where we bring you information from our community and how your living in the United Kingdom may impact on you, or what you do may impact on how you live in the United Kingdom. My name is Tunde Alabi. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this program again. My guest, usual, is here, Jennifer.
How are you? I hope all is well. Thank you for having me.
Right, welcome, Jennifer. Today, let's talk about family matters in law. Family matters. Critical in family matters is the issue of divorce. We've heard stories about families getting divorced in the UK, the man being driven off. Of course, you know. Of course, you know that 80%, 90%, in fact, 95% is always the man.
Your statistics, okay.
My statistics, and I'm absolutely right. It's always the man who gets the brunt, get driven out of the house, denied access to children. Look, how does this work? Why do we have this crisis? On the issue of family matters and
Good question, but let's tackle it one by one. First of all, it's not only men that get asked to leave the house, and it's not only men who get accused of domestic violence.
First two things. Look, we're not talking about domestic violence.
Okay, divorce.
Okay,
women
divorce.
Petition,
strictly.
Men petition.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I know.
So that's the fact. And so when that happens, it can create acrimony in the house. There can be tension. Sometimes it's not feasible for both parties to stay under the same roof. So nowadays, as you may know, the divorce rules in the UK have changed. So you no longer have to prove a ground. Before there was 5 grounds. You have to prove separation, adultery, 5 years separation or 2 years separation, etc. But now that's all gone. Now there's no fault divorce, and it's easier to petition divorce online. You basically complete the form with the other party's details, with your details, you pay the fee, and insofar as you've been married for the minimum amount of time, there is that push forward for everybody to try and move this by way of digital application so that it doesn't get delayed. In the past, things used to get delayed. There would have to be the filing of the petition. The court would have to then list it, process the application, list it. Sometimes it would be challenged. And if it's challenged, it meant you could be wrapped up in legal contest as to whether your marriage had broken down irrevocably for years. So it was determined that this had to change. Many people were kept into in marriages and not able to move on with their lives because of the fact that the divorce had been contested. So that has now changed. So now no fault divorce, you can file online. It's quite simple, but that granting of the decree nisi and decree absolute, you can still challenge it. Once you get notice, you can file your response. If you don't agree, maybe you feel, do you know what? Actually, we've not tried this properly, or what the person has said is not true. They're doing it strategically as a form of manipulation to try and mislead the court. There may be reasons why people do such things, but the point is you can reply and you can challenge, but it's unlikely to be successful if the marriage is broken down irrevocably. You can't just keep somebody married to you because you don't feel that they should divorce you for religious reasons or cultural reasons or many of the other reasons why you might not want that person.
Okay, so before we get to, because divorce is actually the peak of family matters in law, probably. I think so. I mean, if let's start with the minimum.
It's controversial because of culture and because of religion and other things, but there are so many ambits that fall under divorce anyway. But yeah, it is one of the hotly contested issues.
Let's start with the minimum. The minimum, starting with crisis in the house. Say, for instance, the man, in this instance, you earlier on. You earlier said to me, it's not only the man who gets booted out. Okay, let's put it this way. So, and you agreed with me that men also get abused.
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have a situation where the man gets abused, picks up his phone, called the police, said, "Look, I need help. My wife abuses me emotionally and physically." The police, they come into the house. Let's start from there.
What happens?
Who gets removed?
Who gets removed?
Yeah.
Well, it all depends on the circumstances that the police meet. The police may come and find that there's children, a woman, a man in the house. They'll try and get to the bottom of what's happened, but it's highly unlikely that the police will be able to resolve and investigate right there and then.
Absolutely.
What the police will want to do is make sure that
their job is to maintain the peace.
Exactly. Maintain the peace, make sure nobody's at risk of harm.
Yep.
And it's often the case that the police will look to see if either party has somewhere else to go temporarily so that the steam comes down.
So who leave? Who must leave?
That will be determined by the police.
The man.
Right there.
The
they
man
may request it.
Okay, so because it's the man that gets removed.
Yes. More often than not,
often.
It may be the man that gets removed.
In order to maintain the peace.
To some degree that is often
now the question the man who asks the police is, I get abused, I call the police and you ask me to leave the house. To where?
Exactly. It's often difficult for the police to determine who the victim is in that and who the aggressor is in that situation. So the police may call adult social services, may call a victim support line. If it's a good police force, they may have resources, but it's very difficult. Up and down the country, it depends where you are, what resources they have, what intermediaries or domestic violence support network they have. So it's sad to say, but men are often not believed, and often men end up being the ones to leave. And those men, if care is not taken, may lose their livelihoods because you need somewhere to, as a base, to go to work from. Then often when people lose their base, it jeopardizes their work, their studies, then also may jeopardize their ability to visit or have contact with their children. And
so I was just about to say that it's not just about a loss of one's property. We can also have restriction on access to other family members like the children.
Yes, the children. That's often
based on most often on the complaints of the woman.
Can I just remind people that you can get help through refuges. There are hostels. The local authorities should have provision. They're statute bound to make provision for victims of domestic violence. So you have to know how to ask and prevent that risk of being homeless, especially if you don't have the next, family member.
Are there very high chances of being homeless when issue of
unfortunately
domestic violence happens in the house? And well, as we say, quite often the man gets sent out.
Often the man gets sent out. Sometimes the woman, obviously.
And especially a man who is not earning enough to be able to save enough to immediately get a place for himself.
Exactly. One, there's a shortage of property. We know that. And then shortage of affordable property when you add that on top. So yes, that's why I say there is that risk of the individual being asked to leave, leading to them spiraling into homelessness.
Okay, so first there are two angles there. First, we have a situation where the problem of the man gets compounded if he's not documented.
Oh, that's another problem. That's another
layer of the problem.
Yes.
Okay, so before we get to the undocumented man being sent out of the house, or woman, look, Jennifer, it is very rare, especially if she's a mother and she's got children. It's probability that look at the chances who's going to suffer most. It's the woman. So they would rather let the man go to keep the children and the woman. So it's the man.
Or woman being asked to leave is at risk, serious risk of being homeless.
Okay, so we're talking about a man who, or either of them, documented. What are the available options for them, services they can immediately tap into from the government so that they do not maybe in the long run become homeless. Because of course homelessness is real in
really,
London, especially in London.
Really, but
is
London
real.
it's a crisis
This is
point.
crisis,
So,
yeah.
Sadly, what happens is homelessness is a twofold test for most local authorities. One, you may be homeless, sleeping on people's sofas, sleeping rough, or you may be just in some kind of temporary accommodation. So the local authority will first determine, are you homeless? But then there's a second layer, which is, are you in priority need of housing? And then, in order to determine that, each local authority may have their own housing policy. There is the general law about homelessness eligibility, but then, in order for each local authority to meet its statutory obligation, they may have their own housing policy, and that will involve a series of questions and assessment. So, how they assess you may ponder on your income, your health, your contacts, whether you have immediate support network, various things will be assessed. So one, are you homeless? Yes, you may not have access to the accommodation or property that you once had. Then are you in priority need? That assessment there is where a lot of people need help, especially if they're not conveying their vulnerability. Yes, they may be the victim of domestic violence, but have they conveyed how it's affected them emotionally, physically, whether they've lost their assets, whether they've lost their job, etc., whether they have dependents? All of that goes into the assessment. So this is why you see people who get maybe granted temporary accommodation and then that temporary accommodation being cancelled because the local authority may deem that we have helped you for a period of time, you should be back on your feet. Or we have helped you and you're not in such high priority need. Or the emergency is over, go and get accommodation. And most people now need to realize that even if they are working, they may be eligible for a housing top up from their local authority by way through universal credit or whatever assessment. It's important that you ask and advise. We give general advice, but your subjective situation needs to be assessed by a benefits expert, by a housing expert, to make sure that you are getting your full eligibility towards entitlement to access housing and also for benefits that might support you in your crisis. So really important. Don't just think, I'm working, I'm not eligible, I'm fit and healthy. You go to your local authority, you apply, look at their housing policy, do the assessment, make sure you're assessed, and you don't need to just apply to the local authority you live in. You can apply to a local authority you don't live in. If you want to, if they accept people from outside of the area, then they may take you. There are some low populated areas, especially in the south west, like towards Wales. You might be more successful than if you apply in the southeast. So it's really important.
Okay, so
that you do get the right advice, and again, you may not have a choice on what is available. You may be applying in London. You may have eligibility in Manchester or Midlands. Again, people in the Midlands may be applying and they may have eligibility in Wales. Again, if they have a duty towards you, but they don't have any available stock in your area, you may have be accommodated quite far from your support network.
So the major problem people face, as you said, so we have the issue of being homeless and we have the issue of, are you a priority? So the major problem, especially for men, is priority. How does the local authority determine what the term priority?
Once again,
and they use it to knock men out of access to
it's to do with these factors. It could do with the health. It could do with their income,
having children.
Once again,
dependence and the rest of that.
They may be people who have been in the care system previously or ex-offenders. That means that they will be treated within that local authority's policy in dealing with people with that background. So once again, your history and your vulnerabilities and
medical history,
must
condition.
Don't think that it's not relevant. Do tell them, men or women, man or woman, do tell them. And young people as well. In situations like this, it's not just the father and mother that get let me say, in crisis. Young children also take breakup quite badly, and if there's no support there, they may be the ones. If mum's asked to leave, or dad's asked to leave, or they find themselves not wanting to go with either, or in a situation where both parents have left, and then they say you're old enough to look on your own. Sometimes children or young adults find themselves in this situation. So really, really important that you present. Do not put yourself at risk or vulnerable and start sleeping rough. Go to your local authority.
I was just about to ask you, for the benefit of my viewers that are watching this program at home, how does the government define homelessness?
Once again, there are different ways to sort of categorize it, but it's if you do not have access to accommodation that you can call your own, or you don't have access to suitable accommodation. There's technical homelessness. So there's the physical homelessness, there's technical homelessness.
But the word there, suitable, yes, and your own.
Exactly. So you may be in accommodation that is your own, but the roof may have fallen down. So
not suitable.
Or you may have accommodation, but the person living there is violent. Then again, you're at risk. So you're a victim of domestic violence, you have to be treated. So you've got access to that accommodation, but you are at risk. So again, really, really important. It can be, there's the legal definition, but then there's the subjective application, is what I'm saying.
Right. So we're still talking about violence, that family breakup where at the end of the day somebody needs to leave the house in order to allow peace to reign in the house when the police get called into the situation. Right.
Can I just say that before you separate and before you decide to divorce, we have to talk about mediation and
before
therapy.
Somebody need
at the point before you
that's at the voice. Look,
it's true. We also, as solicitors, we do try to tell people that, look, have you considered mediation? Have you considered therapy? And if it's not suitable, that's when you go forward. There is a section the court actually asks, has this person been advised?
ADR, alternative dispute resolution, has it been exhausted?
So you might not have the best family counselors or marriage counselors in your family. You may need to get somebody who's external, who's independent, to listen to both parties. And even if you decide, you know what, we're done together, we're done.
Done.
You may need to mediate. Okay, what's going to happen with the joint bank account? What's going to happen with all of the obligations or the liabilities? What's going to happen with the children? Have those discussions, or you can do it with a mediator, somebody who's neutral, so that there's less money wasted in courts and on lawyers. It's important. So mediation before you separate, really important.
Would any man, I mean, I'm not trying to be, I'm not trying to play a kind of a man-woman game here. Would any man that has been sent out from his house and for days he's been living rough, sleeping rough, ever want to consider settling
mediation? Of course.
Mediation.
There's no
one. You were sent out of your house,
of course you're going to
and
be upset.
had no place.
Of course they're going to be upset.
Will he talk about
They're going to be angry. They're going to be upset. They may even feel that they can never talk to them. You can have mediation without the other person being there. You can go and talk to the mediator on your own. Then the other person can go on their own. You can explain to the mediator, look, I'm still very upset, but I'd like to discuss what the options are or what I would want. And the other person can then go tell them, and the mediator can say, look, on balancing things, this is what I recommend. This is what is a feasible way forward. So try. Even if you can't be in the same room with the person, you can still do mediation.
Let's go on a very short break. When we come back, we'll continue with this program. Don't go away. You didn't turn on your...
Oh, my God. I can see.
But mine will...
But great for God.
No. Yeah.
Oh. And then we do which one? Come back, let's talk about this.
Right, welcome back. We're still talking about family matters, and we're talking about divorce, and we're looking at a situation where somebody gets sent out of the house and then becomes homeless? What
Let's
are
not
the
say
options?
sent out. Let's say just separate, okay? But it may be acrimonious.
You leave your house.
I can imagine all your things inside. You may have to get an appointment with the police to go back and collect your things. You may not be allowed to take your things right there, but you must ask for your essentials. Do not leave without your essentials, your passport, your phone, the things that you need to get to work.
Police will still allow you to do that, basically.
It's really important. Your ID, really important, your work ID, because sometimes when people are told go out by the police, you have to also then know how to say to the police, can I take my essentials, please? I need my essentials. It's important that you have that also confidence to be calm and outline what you need and what is reasonable, okay?
Once the police get involved, you need to be calm, because your outward behavior at that time will be used to judge you.
As I say, if police come to a situation and you're screaming, another person's screaming, the police won't know who's right, who's wrong. They'll just want to calm the situation down. So remain calm. Try to get your essentials. Get yourself some legal advice.
All right. So we've spoken about what a man who or a woman who is documented will enjoy from the government in case of homelessness. Now let's talk about undocumented victim of homelessness. What are the chances, and
it is very difficult.
Move on from there.
When you're not documented, there is the no recourse team that is in each local authority that will assess their ability to help you. There should be no child that is allowed to sleep rough, as you know, but when it comes down to adults, if you do not qualify for any benefits, there is still the no recourse team that will provide you with some basics and support to the level you're eligible for. That's all I can really say. So when we see situations like this, especially those who come as dependents, and things fall out, or they come as dependents and
these days,
the main applicant is not helping you extend, what then happens to you? Especially if you're trying to forge your way on your own, you may not be able to, or you may find that you can switch into another route, or in the meantime, till you get paid, or if you delay in making your renewal for your application, then you have no more share code, you're not allowed to work, and for some reason you can't continue to stay in your accommodation because of maybe a domestic issue. Once again, your first port of call, once you've exhausted any friends or family, is that no recourse team. Do not put yourself at the vulnerability of being homeless or street homeless or susceptible to others who may take advantage of you. Explain to the no recourse team what's happened. They will make an assessment. Once again, they will look at your income, any savings, your background, your access, your eligibility to any other housing, and your medical situation. So they'll look at all of that and your immigration status.
Jennifer, would anyone who is undocumented have the confidence to approach the government for support? Because
thank you for that question.
The first signal is, look,
they're worried about being removed.
Their status in the country. They will not want to approach any local authority for any form of support.
Which is true. We can understand the fear, but then it's important that you do not place yourself at the risk of those who will take full advantage of you, or put yourself at risk where you're sleeping in an unsafe place, or again, street homeless, where anything could really happen. So it's imperative that you realize that going to the no recourse team, explaining why you don't have your documents or what happened, and noting that they will also try to help you. They may put you in touch with solicitors, lawyers who can then give you legal advice as to whether you can make an application to regularize your stay. There is obviously provision for those who are victims of domestic violence to extend their stay if they're falling out of a marriage and they came in initially as a spouse. But people who come in maybe through trafficking, or they've overstayed and it's been years, then they've been in relationships and it's broken down, or again, like they were dependents, like I've given as the example earlier. I understand that it can be very, very scary, but you can get help.
Right. So getting help is very important. Do not take that for granted, no
Yeah.
matter your situation, documented or undocumented. There are series of helps, series of help you can get from local authority if you're not sure what kind of help you are eligible for. You get in touch with your local citizens advice bureau. They can help you assess your situation or speak with a solicitor, or better still, get in touch with us here on the program, or reach out to Obaseki solicitors here in London. We'll put the phone number there, and you can give a call and we might be able to offer some support.
Yeah.
Let's move to the next level in this issue.
Another level again.
Family matter and domestic violence, where we've spoken about loss of property, where the other party
remains in the property, whether it's
Now let's talk about restriction of access to family members like children.
Okay, so when we think about
outright denial,
all right,
based on injunction.
When we look at that kind of situation, you may have an injunction against you, preventing you from going back to the family home. You may simply just even want peace and know that if you go back there, there's going to be trouble. So you don't want any false allegation or further allegations against you, so you stay away. But if there's that allegation that you pose a risk to the children, there may be restrictions on you having contact with your children, parents, grandparents. So that can be a very serious issue. In such situations, it's important that you do get legal advice. As I've said, you may be able to make an application to the court in order to make, in relation to children, to get a child arrangements order. When it comes down to that kind of application, it doesn't always get funding. So legal aid is usually granted for the victims of domestic violence, not always for the person who is accused of domestic violence. So it can be quite difficult for people to afford finding somewhere to live, then afford filing an application to have contact with their child as well. So it can be really financially straining and mentally straining. But the point is, you can make an application and you can ask for interim contact while that application is pending. Don't get me wrong, some people use access to children as a weapon. So if somebody is deliberately preventing you from seeing your child, or trying to alienate you from seeing your child, or trying to turn that child into, turn that child's mind against you, to be, to have animosity towards you or negative thoughts towards you, that is also taken very seriously by the courts. But once again, it's important that a reasonable level of contact is established until a clear pattern is agreed. You can agree to co-parent without going to court. You can come to a parenting agreement, a parental agreement, co-parenting agreement, and then have that agreement signed off by the court. So it can form part of any mediation discussions, which is really important. So do keep a calm head. If your name's on the birth certificate, or it's post, if the child is born after 2002 and your name is there, then you automatically have parental responsibility whether you're married or not. So if you are married, you do automatically have parental responsibility. If you've obtained parental responsibility with a court order, what that means is you can still contact the school to say, separated, but I want updates on attendance, progress in class. I want to also come to parents' evening. Similarly with doctor's records, finding out from the GP that the child is up to date with their health, and if there's any serious incidents, for you to be updated. It is important that you appreciate that just because you're out of the house, it doesn't mean that you lose your parental rights. And if you are being denied access to your child or information, then you should make that application to court so that you can secure the level of contact that you are going to have, the child arrangements, how it's going to come into play. And even if you're not talking to the person, there's actually apps out there now that you can liaise with the parent and discuss the welfare of the child. But the court will look at risk. The court will look at risk. And if there's
risk to the child,
yes, and if the child's old enough to convey their wishes and feelings, the court will also look at that. The court may ask a CAFCAS officer, that's a court of families advisor, to do an assessment of the family. If there's been involvement with social services, the court may look towards a local authority, to a social worker, to also have input as to how the family is and whether they're, what they feel should happen with regards to the levels of contact.
I wanted to ask, are there instances where, okay, so the accused now is the main carer of the child, all the children, and then the victim has,
or alleged victim,
alleged victim has less capacity due to probably sickness, drug, whatever it is, in taking care of the child. And then the alleged accused said, look, this person does not have the full capacity, mental or health. What happens? Will the court release, will social services release the child or children to the alleged accused?
Well, thank you. Good question.
Victim.
Good question.
So where would they both stand?
What normally happens is a local authority in such situation, if they are so concerned, they will issue a public law outline letter to the family. So the local authority may issue, look, we have concerns. We either want to engage you in some intervention work, or we feel that the child is at risk, we want to go to court. And that's when you see them rush into court for an emergency protection order. But usually they engage the family, they make an assessment and decide whether the child should be on some kind of at-risk register, or investigate and then make some recommendations to holistically support the family or just the child. But if they don't get involved, then it's between the two acrimonious people. And if there's an understanding that one has less capacity, then there will be an application. Maybe that person may even report to the police and social services, look, I want welfare checks done. I'm doing a court application. This person has X, Y, and Z, whether they have substance abuse or whether they have mental ill health or whatever it is. Then the person will make an application to court. If the local authority doesn't get involved, once again, that individual may have to pay privately, especially if they don't get legal aid, to make the application. And if they consider it urgent, they may make an urgent application, either for the child to have an instant live with order with them under a specific issue order, so that the child stays with them until the conclusion, because there's an immediate risk, or that person be excluded from the property while they go back in and look after the child. The court may find that kind of situation very difficult, but difficult doesn't mean you don't do. When there is a risk to a child, it's really important that you take the necessary steps to protect the child. Outline the information and evidence that you have. Even it can be difficult, especially if you have emotional ties with the person. It's not that you want to deprive them of the child. You want to protect the child and make sure that they get the help that they need. So get some advice, do the steps that you need to do, and make sure that you are taking your parental responsibility to heart and protecting that child. Because if you don't, you know that the risk could lead to serious harm.
The risk could lead to serious harm, and unfortunately, the outcome of any issue around divorce is not always very...
It's not always rosy for all, but there can be happy divorces. Look at your face. There can. Some happy people divorces. Can have a peaceful divorces. Like that? Well, let's say peaceful divorces.
This is good. Like
and most people may be ready to move on.
Not the word happy.
We pray that nobody has divorces. We pray, but we all pray that if there is a separation, that it be peaceful.
Yeah, peaceful separation. Peaceful separation.
Peaceful.
I love that. All right. But what's important is the sanity of our mind, the safety of people around us.
Exactly.
And especially our own safety is important. We shouldn't be in a relationship that is acrimonious, that is violent. That will not be tolerated in this part of the world. So
no.
What is important is our own safety and the safety of the people around us.
There are so many charities out there to support men and women. Please reach out for help. Sometimes if you're in a community where you're worried about what people say, go to professionals so that you can get professional advice and support that you need.
And I should quickly say this, that women are not the only one who suffer
No.
abuse. Men also suffer mental, physical abuse from their partner. If you are such a person, look, do not die.
Man or
in
woman,
silence.
please do not die in silence. If you're
Speak to
dead,
somebody.
no one can help you. So don't
Absolutely.
let that happen.
This is how we can go the program today. My name is Tuli Alabi. Keep your home safe, and where you cannot, according to Jennifer, make
Be
it
careful.
a peaceful ending.
Peaceful separation. Thank you.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.